Good evening. Welcome to Elyria City Council meeting for December 16th, 2024. At this time, we'll take a moment of reflective silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Callahan, would you still plead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Phones on?
Thank you, Mr. Callahan. At this time, I'd ask everyone to turn off their phones or put them in the silent mode out of courtesy of the council meeting. Be greatly appreciated.
Okay, just checking.
Mr. Clerk, I have roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Callahan.
Aye.
Mr. Sierra.
Here.
Mr. Armstrong. Here. Mr. Oswald.
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell.
Here.
Mr. Tollett.
Here.
Mr. Lippian.
Here.
Mrs. Sawerka.
Here.
Mrs. Davis. Mrs. Schneider.
Here.
Mr. Stewart.
Here.
We have 10 present. I have an excuse for Mrs. Davis.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Public hearings.
We have one.
At this time, I'm going to excuse myself because I've been accused of having a conflict of interest regarding what's going to be presented to you tonight. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Mitchell to carry on with the public hearing.
Please let the record show that Mr. Stewart has recused himself. This public hearing is being held pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 5709.40C. Every property owner within the proposed incentive district has received at least a 30-day notice of this hearing. Are there any proponents? Are there any proponents? Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Any opponents? Any opponents? I declare this public hearing has been held. Mr. Stewart, I get to bang the gavel. Thank you, Mr. Tollett.
And just through you, just for the record, this issue is just for purposes of holding a public hearing tonight to discuss the boundaries of the incentive districts. No vote or any action taken tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Can I get approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Oh, I'm sorry, there was no minutes. My apologies on that. I was told that earlier. Remarks from reports from city officials. Mayor Brubaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. First, there is a resolution today. I want to thank the Law Director's Office and the Council President for getting this on tonight. It was brought late last week, even though I was out of town. Assistant Director Calvert worked with the Law Director's Office and the Council President, but it's just a resolution to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the United States, and this makes Ohio and Elyria part of the 250th anniversary through the Lorain County Historical Society. So I appreciate the help with that. Secondly, I want to thank you all for a great year. 2024, working with you and Law Director's Office, Finance Director's Office with our unions has been a good year, successful year. We're looking forward to what's to come in 2025. And finally, I want to wish all of you and all of our residents and all the people in the audience a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Any questions for the mayor? All right. Safety Service Director, Mr. Pianowski.
Thank you, through you. And to echo what the mayor said, 2024 has
Number one, it's flown by. I feel like we've accomplished quite a bit, and I'm excited about what 2025 will bring for us, and I appreciate all of your work together with us in that vein. We continue to work through the end of the year. We won't be slowing down. We have negotiations continuing with EPPA and AFSCME at this point, so we're working on those issues and continue to meet and continue to try and reach an agreement, as well as all other things that would come before us. So we're still cranking them out, and we're still here if you need anything, so reach out and let us know. Thanks.
Very good. Any questions for the Safety Service Director? Mr. Schneider?
Through you, Mr. President, to the Director. Earlier in the year, we had secured the properties on Parkview Court. Is there any update as to like future demo plans or anything further on those properties? Thank you.
Absolutely. Through you, Mr. President, we intend to have the asbestos remediated before the end of the year, and we've got that scheduled. I don't know the exact date, but we've chosen the contractor. We've had the assessment done. We've put in the purchase order, all that kind of stuff. And then we'll look to have the demolition completed first quarter. We're putting in the temporary budget the funding to do so. We've got 2 quotes, and so I just need to award on that. And I believe police and fire are going to do some training there before we do the demolition. But you should see those come down in the first quarter.
Ms. Sawerka?
Thank you. Through you, the union contracts, are they December ending dates or were they June ending dates? Will there be retro pay?
Thank you, through you, Mr. President, there are December ending
Okay.
dates. But with the EPPA, because the financials were already addressed, there won't be any retro. With AFSCME, presumably, if it goes past the first, there would be.
But end of the year, not a long span of time.
Correct, yes, end of the year,
Thank you.
yes.
Thank you.
Good. Any other questions? Thank you. Finance Director Pulaski?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just like to wish everybody here tonight a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We are posting the last pay of the year this week, so we'll be wrapping the books up within the next couple weeks, obviously. So I'll have a report for you at beginning of the year on how we are cash-wise in the general fund especially. So.
Any questions for the Finance Director? No? Law Director Derry?
Good evening, through you, Mr. President. Just a few things. We, as a city, will have our day in court on the former Holiday Inn, Days Inn, call it what you'd like. We will be there Monday morning, so 2 days before Christmas, if that's something you observe. So 10 a.m., that is the date that soon-to-be retired Judge James Moraldi's court gave us, and we said we will be there. We are going to be there with our partners who were very, very instrumental in us filing this case, from Lorraine County Health District, of course, the fire department, the police department, the building department, and we will be stating our case for having that declared a nuisance. I am hopeful, although I don't believe that we'll have everything resolved, all tied up in a bow right then and there, but I do think that that's very good news, and I wanted to let you know about that. And on another note, which is I don't think is positive, but does involve the courts, my office has been notified that there has been an administrative appeal filed on the Hubie Oliver matter in Common Pleas Court, basically in opposition to the conditional use being denied by council. And City Council has not yet been formally served, but it is on the docket, and we will keep you posted as to all of that. Obviously, that is why we go through and we do a record and all those types of things, and we have minutes, and we go through all the legal criteria that the ordinances and the state law require, so that the rationale behind your decision as a public body is on the record. So, but I did want to make you aware of that. There is one ordinance that will be brought up in miscellaneous and unfinished business. It was laid on the table before you. After the Chapter 165 updates were passed, I did hear from the two Elyria Municipal Court judges and also Clerk of Courts Rothgary, who had some questions. There was one particular provision that they had some concerns about because they have employees who still receive longevity compensation. And I spoke with the Human Resources Department and also Finance Director Pileski. And so we did tweak the language a little bit, and that is what's before you this evening. Again, the procedure is what is already being followed. This is just actually to codify what is actually happening and to provide clarification. And again, Elyria Municipal Court was happy with the proposed language, as is what's going to be before you to take action tonight. We are asking for that to be under suspension of rules and declared an emergency due to the effective date being the first of the year. So with that, I don't have anything else to report, but I'm always available for questions.
Ms. Werka?
Thank you. Through you, would it be helpful for us, those of us available for Monday morning, to be there in the court? Is that a help or not a help?
It's
You can think about it and
open
let
to the
us know.
public. I certainly would invite you all to come, anyone who is available. I think that would be, I think, you know, I just have it in my calendar as just days in with an exclamation point. So,
I think we
yes,
all
would
feel that
welcome
way.
Yes,
We all feel
yes,
days in with exclamation points.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions for the law director?
Yes.
Oh, Mr. Schneider?
Through you, Mr. President, to Law Director Deary. Is there any update on the marijuana use zoning?
Through you, yes. Attorney Brunig has been in touch with our new city planner, and we've been working through basically trying to incorporate that into, obviously, trying to update our whole zoning code, but also not have it unreasonably delayed it the whole time. So it will be hopefully very quickly into the new year that we'll have something for you.
Very good. Any other questions? Mr. Lippian?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President. Question for just in general, because I don't know, I'm not sure, and I don't know what I don't know. Now, that's a tautology, but all that being set aside, who authorized the law director to hire a private attorney in September of 2024?
Through you, Mr. President. I'm not sure which private attorney you're referring to. We hire any number of, or we reach out to any number of outside legal counsels, special prosecutors, things of that nature. The charter enables me to do that. I can tell you that at any given moment, if there is a either perceived or actual conflict of interest in a criminal procedure that in which I or other members of my office need to be recused, it is fairly common practice that we will bring in an outside legal counsel, someone who is licensed practice law in the state of Ohio, to handle that case. We do that if, for example, someone has a family member who gets a speeding ticket. We will do that if one of our employees is involved in a criminal matter. Most recently, and this was obviously made even national news, I recused myself and also myself and my office when the Lorain County Sheriff's Department filed criminal charges against our sitting county prosecutor. There were a number of reasons that I did that. One, political reasons. I'm of the same political party as the county prosecutor. He was running for election. Two, several members of my office. One was a former member of that office. One of my attorneys is married to a current employee of that office. My spouse used to work for that particular person. And so at that point in time, when a case such as that is filed, I am charged under this charter of the city and also duty-bound by my oath to handle the case that's filed in the court. And at the same time, if I am ethically prohibited from handling it, or for my office from handling it, then we will recuse ourselves, and state law says that we will find someone appropriate to handle it in my stead.
Okay, so who okayed the $475 per hour for the law firm? Because I don't know. I don't think it came
I
before council.
entered into an engagement letter. My budget handles, my budget has a line item for professional services and outside legal counsel, and so that is appropriated. I will tell you that we have not yet received an invoice from the special prosecutor who handled this matter.
Okay, so we don't know how many hours we're up to, or was there a cap?
There was not a cap. However, in these types of cases, I had a fairly decent estimate because felony cases only make it through the preliminary hearing stage in municipal court. So I had a fairly decent idea of what the maximum number of hours would be.
Okay, so who's paying them? Is it us? And if so, when? Is it coming before council at some point?
No, it will
or
come
I just
out
don't
of,
know.
it would come out of, well, no, it would come out of my budget. Because it had already, in a sense, it had already come, actually not in a sense, it had already come before city council because city council had approved my budget for 2024.
Okay.
And the money was in my budget to handle it, much like other special prosecutors who have been brought in from other firms, from other jurisdictions to handle other cases where there has been a conflict.
Okay, I guess when conflicts are brought up, it sounds to me like the conflicts you described are political party-oriented. Also, your spouse.
No, through you,
Oh,
they
wait,
were
hold on, I haven't
ethically.
finished yet. I haven't finished yet. You did mention political party. You mentioned your spouse. I presume you're talking about the safety service director, so.
for the
My
record,
question is
two of my
why- Hold on,
employees
excuse
as
me,
well.
ma'am, excuse me. I'm still, with your respect, still talking. Why was this at Muni Court? Why not to the Court of Common Pleas?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have any control of a case being filed by a law enforcement agency. The municipal court has jurisdiction over felony matters. We handle many felony matters where the first stop is municipal court. When a law enforcement agency files a case in municipal court, then my office, who prosecutes on behalf of the state of Ohio, has a responsibility to see that case through. So I don't have an answer for why the case was brought. The legal nerd in me has a lot of theories, but I do not have an answer for that.
Okay, yeah, it just strikes me as a duplication of services. It was always being done at the county. I don't know why we got into a conflict between the sheriff and the prosecutor. But I guess
Through you,
my
Mr.
last,
President,
excuse me, ma'am,
I
I'm
don't
still.
have that- I don't
still-
have an
again,
answer for that.
Point of order, I'm still talking
hey,
again.
so,
Just
Mr. Lippian, I
last
guess-
question, excuse me,
Mr. Lip-
Mr. Chair, last question. How does this benefit the city of Elyria?
Through you, Mr. President, when a jurisdiction, when a law enforcement agency brings charges, and the allegations say that a crime was committed within the jurisdiction of the city of Elyria, which was the case here, then I am duty-bound. The oath that I took as a law director, the oath that I took 20 years ago as an attorney for the state of Ohio, to prosecute or see that that case is prosecuted. And I took an oath that I would do that for all the citizens of Elyria. Was it the happiest day? No. These are very heart-wrenching days. But I also took that oath to do my job for difficult days and for happy days.
Just like the TV show. Happy days. Okay. Well, I'm just asking because, again, I don't know. I didn't see it come before council. I know it was a matter of some importance. It didn't come up in your report. And I don't see how it benefits the city of Elyria for us to be paying for that, but I guess I'll leave that to the voters and other people to assess. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you.
I think that could have been handled in a different way, Mr. Lippian.
I have the right to do that, Mr. Chair.
You
Thank
do, you do have a right, but professionally, it should have been handled in a better way. Moving on, remarks and reports from City Police Department. Chief Pelka. Any questions for the chief? Nope. Elyria Fire Department, Chief Pernesti. Report. Engineering, Mr. Schneider. Any questions for Mr. Schneider? Chief Building Official, Mr. Farkas. Human Resources, Ms. Yusefi.
Thank you, through you. I wanted to, after we had passed the ordinances and the handbook in November, you had asked me to come back before the end of the year to give you an update on what kind of feedback we got from any of the bargaining units. And so shortly after we had our last meeting, we did send that out to all of the bargaining units. We did not receive any feedback on any changes that needed to be made. So we're going to be moving forward. Is there any questions on that?
Any questions for Ms. Yusefi? Ms. Swerka.
Thank you, through you. Director, each employee is going to get a copy of this handbook, or is it just only electronic, or are you documenting that they're receiving it?
Mr. Parnowski.
I may. We will, through you, Mr. Chair, we will have an electronic link always available on the intranet, so they'll know that they can always find the most current version there. I think that we will email initially we'll email it out to all employees, and we will have an acknowledgement form, which we will then have them sign off on, acknowledging the creation, but also that they recognize where they can always find it. And we'll put a copy of that in their employee file so that we have that. And one particular union I did have some conversation with, and I'll speak on that because Ms. Yusefi was not part of those conversations. We did talk with the fire union during a negotiation session before we got started. We talked about this topic, and we are going to have some conversation about different places where the manual might come into conflict with the contract in their opinion, and talk through those things and how that might work. But in some instances, that might come up later on and through the application of the manual as well. So there will be some of that adjustment period, I think. But we didn't get any particular feedback about a section or any edits that were requested. So I think we're ready to move forward, and we did send all those notices out some time ago. So they've had plenty of opportunity to review it and get back to us.
I also, I'm sorry.
Mr. Giuseppe, do you want to weigh in on that?
No, that's the plan.
Okay, very good. Mr. Oswald, did you have a comment?
Change of subject. I just want to thank the HR department for running a great decorate your Christmas offices. I had a blast. Ms. Mitchell and Mr. Schneider went around. I don't have kids. You guys have all kinds of fun at Christmas time. I don't do very much. And this was a blast for me. I think everybody enjoyed doing it, and we're talking you're going to keep doing it. It was a great idea, a lot of involvement, a lot of help, and I just want to say thanks for everybody that was involved. Thank you.
Very good.
Well, my second point was to thank you for doing that judging. It was really definitely a fun time, and the building department had their prize luncheon today, and a good time was had by all.
Very good. Congratulations to the building department on that note.
That's right. And then I just wanted to wish everybody happy holidays and good luck into the new year.
Very good. Thank you. Everybody? Very good. President's referrals and remonstrances. Item number 1, community development. Item number 2, finance. Item number 3, finance. Item number 4, finance. Item number 5, finance. Item number 6, finance. Item number 7, finance and utilities. Item number 8, finance and utilities. Item number 9, finance and utilities. Items 10 through 13 received and placed on file in the clerk's office. Petitions and remonstrances from the lobby.
We have one, Teresa Shea, 519 East Avenue. Subject is increased water bill and sanitation.
Welcome, Ms. Shea. Please state your name and address for the record.
Teresa Shea, 519 East Avenue, Elyria. I'm not sure, as a private citizen, of the present status of decisions about rate increases for the water bill and an increase for the sanitation department, but I want to speak about them anyway. I did attend some discussions in finance and utilities and community development meetings. I spoke separately on the phone before this, in which John Snyder gave me an overview about why water and sewer bills were needing an increase that was absolutely needed to fulfill situations. What I wrestle with is that I can't afford an increase in my bill for that. The $5 increase for sanitation department, however, is something I can get behind. The sanitation department helps me so very much every week without me begging for help. They are excellent. I have lived in many big cities over my life, and this present sanitation department is a dream come true for me. They are excellent, deserve a raise, helps me, are professional. Elyria can be proud. Give them the $5 extra amount on our bills and compliment the fact that they make the world a better place. Dear council members, be a part of this wonderful help to the sanitation department that helps me so much, as does the streets department. It is an opportunity you don't want to miss to be a part of the city that really helps forgotten people like me. And I'd also like to point out two wonderful miracles I viewed in Elyria or through the newspaper. The great bike giveaway in the middle of South Elyria on Saturday, all these happy children, and what a beautiful thing to do. And also what the police did for all those kids. It just made me happy. And Mr. Sarah, once again, with his wonderful toys to the Chronicle. So these are all positive things, and I hope you will listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shea.
That's all petitions and remonstrances from lobby.
Petitions and remonstrances from council members.
There are none.
Reports of standing and special committees.
There are none.
Resolutions, first reading.
A resolution in support of the Ohio Commission for the United States Semi-Quincentennial, America 250-OH, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Sarah.
I make a motion to pass this resolution on its first reading under suspension of rules and declaring an emergency without a benefit of a committee report.
Second.
Motion and second.
Question.
Discussion.
Call for the question.
Questions have been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Resolution 2024-45. That's all resolutions first reading.
Resolutions, second reading.
There are none.
Resolutions, third reading.
There are none.
Ordinances, first reading.
Sponsored by Finance, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a professional services agreement for an operator or operators of record at the wastewater pollution control plant and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Mr. Snyder. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2024-189. Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance to incorporate the 2025 Ohio minimum wage for part-time seasonal pay grades and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Mr. Center. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2024-190. Sponsored by Finance and Utilities. An ordinance amending ordinance 2021-73, known as the salary ordinance, to add the position of Labor 3 for the Parks and Recreation Department and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2024-191. Sponsored by Finance, an ordinance amending ordinance number 2024-46, known as the 2024 Permanent Appropriations Ordinance, to change funds in various accounts.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schneider. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2024-192. Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance to fix temporary appropriations for the first 3 months of the year 2025 and other expenses of the city of Elyria.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Mr. Snyder. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2024-193. Sponsored by Finance and Utilities, an ordinance amending Chapter 959 entitled Sanitation Rules and Regulations, Section 959.11 entitled Rates for Collection, to create a new provision of codified ordinances of the City of Elyria and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Mitchell. Discussion?
Question.
I want to make a comment in regards to this. I think it was great debate and conversations about what, what's facing us. This has been going on since 2019. As far as these sanitation rates, Finance Director Pulaski has, been telling us about this over the many of years, and it's been in the red for a while. So this is going to help out that, and I'm going to support this measure. But one request that I would ask is that, while there was a study that was done in 2019, I think the Safety Service Director said he's going to revisit that and ask the company to kind of, based on today's rates and what we have right now and what's being proposed, that I think we should look out to outsourcing what that looks like for the sanitation department. I think we need to do that as a service. We're not, just to see what else is out there. Right now, we're just saying, this is what the city is offering and that. It's a great service. They do a great job, but I think we need to look at this, see what those numbers are, and I would recommend that. That's my comment.
Just
Mr.
to clarify,
Paradowski.
through you, Mr. President, is that for comparison's sake?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure I
Just
understand.
for comparison to see what is out there, what we have currently, and what is. I know there's probably not going to be a lot of apples to apples, but I think we need to look at that. I need to know what those cost savings are going to end up being for what we have currently now, and to what else is out there. Ms. Sawerka.
Thank you, Mr. President. I support your comments and agree 100%. I felt uncomfortable with this increase from the beginning because I don't feel that we have looked at enough efficiencies currently. I've talked to the finance director multiple times. If we just waited a little bit on this, you're talking about $75,000. 1 month isn't going to make a difference. I realize that a year's worth of 75,000 is $1 million. But we have yet to look at the efficiencies that can be gained. I know there are some in the works. I just don't feel comfortable voting for this when things are still in the works and not before us as efficiencies. And so I feel uncomfortable. I agree with Mrs. Shea. We have great workers and they do a great job. But at some point, we need to look at where can we cut some corners and make some savings. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Work. Is there any other discussion?
Call for the question.
Question has been called. On this suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
2 nays.
2 nays.
On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
1 nay. I don't know if we have, what's the
We got it.
vote? Well, Director Deary?
Yeah, through you, Mr. President. The emergency failed, however, the suspension passed and the ordinance itself passed.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Ordinance 2024-194. Sponsored by Finance and Utilities, an ordinance amending Chapter 937 Sewer Charges Section 937.12 Schedule of Rates, codified ordinances of the City of Elyria, Ohio, to reflect established sanitary sewer rates for the years 2025, 2026, and 2027, and repealing any ordinances in contradiction thereto and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Tolet?
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Ms. Sawerka?
Thank you, through the chair. I would just want to say that I'm in support of this, and I want to acknowledge Mayor Brubaker's work on reducing this and bringing before us some options. All the costs have gone up, obviously, at both the water plant and the wastewater plant. Chemicals are more, utilities, electricity is more. So I'm in support of this, and I appreciate his efforts of making it, reducing it as much as we possibly could.
Any other discussion?
Call for the question.
Question's been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Roll call vote.
We just had 1 nay there.
No.
Two.
There was 2 nays?
Just 2 nays then?
Oh, 3 nays? Okay.
Mr. Armstrong, are you a nay? Mr. Lippian, are you a nay? So we have 2. Dismiss the roll call then. That was on the suspension. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
2 nays.
Through you, Mr. President, you dispensed with the roll call vote, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
1 nay.
2 nays.
2 nays.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. President, emergency failed, but suspension and passage ordinance passed.
Ordinance 2024-195. Sponsored by Finance and Utilities, an ordinance amending ordinance number 2021-181 to establish the rates of water charged inside and outside the city of Elyria for calendar years 2025, 2026, and 2027, and repealing any ordinances in contradiction thereto and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Tolet?
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion? Mr.
Que-
Lippian?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President, I do have some discussion. Just confirming these water rates are 15% in '25, another 15% in '26, and then another 15% in '27, correct?
Mayor Bruberg, do you want to address that?
That is correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. In which case, I would like to make a motion to amend the initial motion by substituting 10% for 15% as the proposed annual water rate increase.
I'll second that.
There's a motion by Mr. Lippian. There is a second by Mr. Armstrong. Any other discussion?
I would like to explain that action, Mr. President. I struggled with this because Elyria is about a 20% poverty rate, which means 1 in 5 Illyrians are living in poverty. We have a 32.9% poverty rate for children, and we have a 39.5% poverty rate for children under 5 years old. The Ohio State average poverty rate is 13.4%. That puts Elyria somewhere in the stratosphere of the top 10 cities in the state of Ohio for their poverty rate. This is concerning to me because given Elyria's size and our poverty rate, I worry that this 15% compound increase over 3 years is really going to hurt the most vulnerable among us in our community. So I did some homework, and I looked for other communities and what they had done to see if there was a precedent for this. I had a very difficult time finding anybody that had done a 15% compound increase over 3 years. If anybody did a 15% increase, I found it at a one-time increase, and that would be the city of Canton, which is, you could say, a peer city. Elmhurst, Illinois did a 28% combined one-time water plus sewer, and ours would far exceed that in the second year. Perrysburg did a 10% compound interest rate to 24 to 26. El Paso, Texas did an 8% one-time water increase. San Jose, California, an 11% one-time water increase. In Chicago, a 9%, again, one-time increase. And these sources are the city websites for each of these municipalities. Now, in the state of Ohio, I could not find a peer city like ours at our size and our poverty rate that had this kind of increase. Indeed, even without our size and poverty rate, I couldn't find one. I looked throughout the U.S., and I could not find a peer city to us that had our kind of poverty rate and our population, which is in the 50,000s, that did a compound increase like this. I have some serious concerns that this water rate increase is overly aggressive, and that perhaps by reducing the water rate increase to 10%, which is still at the high level of any other municipality I could find, the closest being Perrysburg, which would be less than ours by 10% in our third year. I think 10% is still too high, but it I think is a little less aggressive. I know we have some infrastructure needs we've got to meet. I know 2028, thereabouts, is when we were wanting to meet them. I think that we could reduce the percentage of aggression to this rate increase and perhaps slide over to the right a little bit, perhaps into the 2030s on the completion for some of this infrastructure. Again, I really worry that this is going to hurt the most vulnerable among us and that it'll be hard for them to sustain. And I'd like the council to consider a more reasonable increase.
Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Mr. President. Anytime somebody gets an increase, they don't want to pay for it. I know I'm sorry, that's life. You know, there's a lot of them struggling every time we put an increase. But you know what? The team has done a lot of work, and what they do is they look at the amount of money coming in and what the expenses are. And if you can't get your expenses down, you've got to increase prices. Or how do we keep going into the hole and going into the hole when we don't have enough money that we're collecting? So I guess I struggle with making people pay more money, but what do we do as a city when we don't have enough money to pay our bills? Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Is there any other further discussion? Mr. Werka.
Thank you. Through the chair, just for clarity, I had asked this question at the committee meeting, and I don't know if I can put the engineer on the spot, or maybe the safety service director would know. could we get some gauging of what an average bill is going to be? I thought from the committee meeting, it was about an increase, just water and sewer, was somewhere on either side of $6 to $8 a month. Does that sound about right? And then sanitation, of course, is a separate, that was a flat 5. So the bills would be somewhere between $11 to $13 more. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. President, that's my recollection as well, and that was looking at a average 5 user on the water.
Okay. So I think that however everyone feels up here, that I think you should keep that in mind of what the end result is. The numbers, the percentages look staggering, and $10 a month may not seem like a lot, but to some people that could be a lot. But I think that as you vote your conscience, you should have some idea that it's somewhere on either side of $10 to $13 more each month for the average user. That, I think, is how we should look at some of these things versus just the straight percentages. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's a motion made on the floor to amend per Mr. Lippian's requirement to the law director. Does that need to go the formality of just approving that, or do we need to do the suspension? I mean, do we need to, or just put that on the floor and vote on either moving forward?
Through you, Mr. President, I believe that the council needs to address the motion that's currently before you, the motion to amend.
Okay. So there's a motion on the floor to amend. All those in favor? Mr. Sarah?
Well, I don't know that the question's been called yet.
Okay.
Just real quick for maybe the engineer, any idea what kind of impact this would have on some of the stuff that we talked about needing to do in the next few years and how far back that could set us?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
So if we were to cut this back to the 10%, I mean, I know you guys have been looking at this for some time, and we started out, I think, higher than the 15 and came down. Especially with the main lines coming from Lake Erie on, how far back do you think that would set us if we had that less amount of money coming in?
I would only be guessing up here, unfortunately. I mean, it's something that we would have to plug into our model to really come up with a good answer.
Right, and I know.
But it'd definitely be years. It would definitely be years.
Thank you.
Is there any other further, Mr. Schneider?
Through you, Mr. President, I don't know if Director Pianowski can help with this, but with the people that are in dire need of help, we have a homestead program available, correct? Is it age restricted or income too, like the county tax one? Do you know are you familiar, like if they make below a certain level, can they apply for a homestead reduction, or do they have to be 65 or a certain age? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. President, I believe that if you qualify for the homestead with the county, that's how you qualify for
It's
ours.
parallel.
I believe that's correct, yeah, but I think it's mostly age and maybe if you're a disabled veteran status, I believe was another thing that came into play if you're a disabled veteran. So I think that it's based on the county qualification. I don't believe it's income-based.
Thank you. It is.
Any other question? Mr. Lippian, or discussion, I should say?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to comment, I think that's for residents that are in the higher bracket of the age range. I think that doesn't apply to young families, especially families with children, and when we have a child poverty rate under 5 years old at 40%, that's going to hit them the hardest. So I just wanted to make sure that got clarified.
Good. Any other discussion?
Call for the question.
Questions have been called. All's in favor signify.
Wait, what are we voting
I would
on?
just say,
We're
just
voting on the
the
amendment.
motion, the amendment
Yes.
for 10 years, or I'm sorry, excuse me, 10% for the next 3 years.
That's
Is that, if
correct.
that's correct, that's the motion?
Is that the motion, right, Mr. Lippian?
Excuse me, yeah, that's the motion, 10%, a reduction from 15% to 10% for those 3 years, and I would request a roll call vote.
So just for clarification, it's just replace, your motion is a 10% across for the 3 years, and replacing it instead of 15.
Yeah, my motion, to repeat it, Mr. President, was I move to amend the motion by substituting 10% for 15% as the proposed annual water rate increase.
There's a motion, there's a motion, there's been a second.
And the question's been called.
Question's
Roll
been
call vote.
called.
Roll call vote, please.
Question's been called. Roll call vote.
Mr. Callahan?
Nay.
Mr. Sarah?
Nay?
Mr. Armstrong? Aye. Mr. Oswald?
Nay.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Nay.
Mr. Tolet?
Nay.
Mr. Lippian?
Aye.
Mrs. Sawerka?
Nay.
Mr. Schneider?
Nay.
Mr. Stewart?
Nay.
2 nays. I mean, 2 ayes, excuse me.
2 ayes, the rest nays. The amendment fails.
So this time we need to make a motion to, as it was presented to us.
If there are no further questions,
Is there any further
Backwards.
questions in regards to that?
going,
I call for the question on the original motion.
Question's been called.
Second?
On the suspension,
Go ahead. Actually, I would request a roll call vote for the suspension, please.
so on the suspension,
roll call vote.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. Sierra?
Aye.
Mr. Armstrong?
Nay.
Mr. Oswald?
Aye.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Tolet?
Aye.
Mr. Lippian?
Nay.
Mrs. Sawerka?
Aye.
Mr. Schneider?
Aye.
Mr. Stewart?
Aye.
8 ayes.
suspension is passed. And then on,
On the emergency,
okay,
is this a roll call vote? No roll call vote. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay. 2
A
nays.
nay or 2 nays?
2 nays.
2 nays, okay.
On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
2 nays?
2 nays. Motion carried.
great, yes. So 3, Mr. President, emergency has failed, ordinance has passed.
Ordinance 2024-196. An ordinance authorize the mayor to enter into a professional service contract with Brian K. Balzer Company, LPA, to represent the city of Elyria against companies concerning their alleged manipulation of the market for insulin and insulin analog diabetes medications and declare an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Mr. Tolet. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2024-197. That's all ordinances first reading.
Ordinance is second reading.
Sponsored by Community Development, an ordinance amending Section 1131.02 Codified Ordinances of the City of Elyria, Ohio, known as the zoning ordinance, to rezone certain real property located at Brunswick Drive and West Ridge Road, Elyria, from B-N Business Neighborhood District to R-MD Residential Medium Density District, and declare an emergency.
I declare this ordinance has had its second reading. Public hearing is scheduled for January 6, 2025 at 7 p.m. Council chambers.
Sponsored by Community Development, an ordinance granting a conditional use permit pursuant to Chapter 1135 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Elyria, Ohio, to Ridgewater LTD for a cluster home development at real property located at Brunswick Drive and West Ridge Road, Elyria, Ohio.
I declare this ordinance has had its second reading. Public hearing is scheduled for January 6, 2025 at 7 p.m. Council chambers.
That's all ordinances second reading.
Ordinance is third reading.
There are none.
Committee calls.
Community Development, request the Law Director, Safety Service Director, and Building Inspector and Engineer on Monday, 12/16, which is tonight. Immediately following council. And Strategic Planning, request Mayor, Safety Service Director, Finance Director, and Law Director, immediately following council on Monday, 1/6/2025. That's all the committee calls?
Very good. Miscellaneous and unfinished business. Mr. Tolet?
Go ahead, Mr. Lippian.
Mr.
Excuse me, I
Armstrong?
was actually deferring to Mr. Armstrong.
Mr. Armstrong?
Through you, President, I just want to send my gratitude out to everybody up here, especially to all the department heads that I've popped in and bugged, just trying to get a better understanding of this job to please the residents. So I just want to say thank you guys for a great freshman year here on council, and happy holidays to all y'all and your family.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Anybody else? Miscellaneous and unfinished business? Mr. Tolet? Go ahead. Mr.
I'll
Lippian?
defer to Mr. Toletti, he was next in the roster.
Through you, Mr. President, in regards to Mr. Lippian's comments regarding the law department, I'd like to take the high road on this. And during the course of the year, our finance director puts out line items regarding the budget that are presented and approved or disapproved by members of council. And I would volunteer to work with Mr. Lippian so he knows how municipal budgeting works, so that he could understand that our law director has a budget that she's allowed to work with, and we've approved these every year the past several years. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lippian.
Well, thank you, and thank you for that earnest and generous, and I think probably the likelihood isn't 0% that that was a genuine offer of help. I'd like to also extend my help to the law director and president of council to understand a definition of professionalism that includes not interrupting people when they have the floor.
Okay. Any other miscellaneous and unfinished business? If not, Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. President, there is legislation that was laid before us this evening, and I will make a motion that this is passed under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
There's a motion by Ms. Mitchell, or do we need to read the committee report and then Ms.
Yes.
Mitchell?
Thank
Oh,
you.
I'm so sorry.
All right.
That's okay.
And just through you, Mr. President, then this is without a benefit of a committee report. Thank you.
An ordinance amending section 165.07D1 of the codified ordinances of the city of Elyria effective January 1st, 2025, and declaring an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed under suspension of rules and declared an emergency without the benefit of a committee report.
Motion?
Second.
Second by Ms. Work. Is there any further discussion
Question.
on the suspension? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2024-198.
If there's nothing further to come before this council, Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. President, I will make a motion to adjourn, but before we do, I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and remind all members of community development to stay in your seats. Thank you.
Motion and second. And all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Meeting's adjourned.
No, no.
Interesting night.
Yeah. Merry Christmas. Yes.
Okay, so 30th and the next building site lab.
Hey, we have a quick meeting. I can't, I'm accusing.
Oh, that's right.
So I just asked Chad to note it for the record, he's recusing too.
Yeah, that's right. We're down to the nitty gritty.
Hey, have a Merry Christmas.
You too, you too.
Okay.
All right.
Good New Year.
And thanks, Brad. You take care. You, me, and there's three. There's three. Oh. I don't even know what I'm saying.
Call the meeting to order.
I'll call community development. Ready? Oh, you're good. I was giving everyone a little break. Green everything. I couldn't. It's the only pen I could find. All right. Good evening and welcome to the community development meeting for Monday, December 16th, 2024. We have three. Andrew left. We have one agenda item, and due to a potential business conflict of interest, I'll be recusing myself from agenda item number 1. Mrs. Mitchell will handle it, and I will be back for adjournment.
All right.
Mrs. Mitchell?
You're everywhere.
Please let the record show that Mr. Snyder has recused himself. Oh, I need the committee report. I'm so sorry. Thank you. The one agenda item we have is the matter of the final plat for Windsor Place subdivision. Mr. Yost, did you want to speak on this? Just for you. Are there any questions or concerns for Mr. Yost? Seeing none, I'll read the committee report. We have considered the matter of accepting the final plat for Windsor Place subdivision, and this is an ordinance authorizing the approval of the said plat. The plat was approved by Planning Commission on October 3rd, 2024, with no conditions. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Are there any other questions?
Question.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Mr. Snyder can come back in.
That's a new record.
Thank you, Mrs. Mitchell. If there's no further business to come before this committee, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Mitchell, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Callahan. All in favor?
Question on the motion.
Question on the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
Motion
carries.
carried.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah.
Hey, you got one under your belt.
Merry Christmas, everyone.